Hi, friends. I'm Dinine. I'm the host of this show, The Space in Between. I'm a mom, I'm an attorney, I'm an author, and I'm also a widow. We're going to get into some really important stuff today, and I'm really grateful that you're here and you're going to be sitting with us on The Space in Between. Hi, friends. Welcome today to The Space in Between. This show is a little bit different. I did this once before last year where I had a call-in show with questions from new listeners. Today, we are doing a call-in show with podcasters, all of whom are based in Indiana. It didn't start out that way, but it worked out that way, and I'm really excited to have some of these people on the show and have some of their listeners tune in to hear their questions for me and for you all, my listeners, to hear my answers to those questions. The hope for this show is that everyone out there gets to know me a little bit better and then also gets exposure to these new shows. I think the questions are both fun and engaging and a little bit comical at times, and also they can go a little deep. So get ready to kind of explore what's in the minds of podcasters in Indiana with me on The Space in Between. Thanks.
Hi, Dinine. This is Kelly Young calling from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm the founder and host of Badassery Life podcast, a podcast where we celebrate and tell the stories of ordinary women doing extraordinary things, women who are living their badass lives. And my question for you, as I think about the women that I've interviewed on the show who are moms, artists, entrepreneurs, caregivers, survivors, well, we play so many roles, we do so many different things. How do you take care of yourself? What's your self-care routine? It's something that weighs heavily on my mind as I think about all the different things that we are responsible for and that we're doing, and hear more and more that we're not taking care of ourselves. So how are you taking care of yourself?
Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for that question. That is a great question, and one that we probably all need to examine every once in a while, maybe do a self-audit. So what I do is I kind of try to aspire to a few different, I would say like large categories that I know will deliver for me. So it's physical health, mental health, emotional health, social connection, and self-love / self-compassion. I like to get to the gym. When I'm not at the gym, I am doing a walk or a bike ride. I love riding my bike and I love walking. So those two things are easy for me. I've also incorporated a barre class, which stretches and tones in different ways than my gym, which is more of a lifting type gym, does. So I love that. I do aim for sleeping and eating well. I haven't solved the sleep hack, guys. So if any of you know it, send over your tricks. I've tried all different prescriptions as well as the, CBD sprays and melatonin, and I just struggle with getting enough sleep. I feel like I would do so much better if I got more sleep, but I do. In taking care of myself, Kelly, I do try to make that a priority. My home is very peaceful at night, and I love that. And I love that I have that control. I also take a bath or a shower every night because I don't want my sheets to be connected to the streets. That's like my little jokey poem, but my sheets are always clean, and that makes me feel clean. And that helps me feel more comfortable to hopefully sleep better. Tying into that is your mental health, relaxation, positive mindset. I try really hard to go through a guided meditation that will bring in mindfulness or breathing techniques. I especially use that at night to get ready for sleep and for a positive mindset before you go to sleep. I have learned that makes all the difference in the world. So I engage in promoting myself. I tell myself that I look good. I tell myself that I feel good. I tell myself that I'm doing good. And I want to be the one that really pumps me up. I don't want to ever rely on anyone else to do that. And I never really have, but I've been at places where I was kind of looking for that, and I don't really want that in my life anymore. Emotional health, you've got to set boundaries. You've got to be able to express your feelings if you're with friends or a significant other where you can't express your feelings without it being a big blow up. Those are the wrong people. They're not your people, and you've got to be around people that you can. The same thing with setting boundaries. I'm not a huge boundary girl. If I love you, you're probably going to be able to do and say whatever you feel in the same way that I would hope you would give me that same latitude. But healthy boundaries are good when necessary. And I find when meeting new people, especially men, I do have to set boundaries right away. And this is something I've been getting much better at in the past 2 years. And I'm grateful for that practice that I've set. Make sure you have at least one person that you can seek unequivocal support from. That is so important. And that ties into a social connection. Stay connected to your people, the ones that you love. Even when you're feeling down, I'm one of those people that likes to go into hiding when I'm not feeling great and cut people off. That is not always the best way to approach it. Sometimes you do need downtime, but try to make it a plan to spend time with people you love, at least once or twice a week. And then the final thing I want to say about how I take care of myself is I developed a huge amount of self-compassion and self-love, specifically in the last 2 years. I found that I wanted to change the narrative that someone else had placed in my life, and I didn't believe that the narrative was true, and I didn't want to follow that narrative. So I started telling myself what I wanted to hear, and I am my own best promoter. I am my own best friend. I love Dinine probably more than anybody else could love me, and that makes me a little bit, I don't want to say invincible, but it makes me less likely to allow others to tear me down. And that's something that I've really practiced and taken some time on. So those are my sort of solutions for how I try to take care of myself now. These are things I work at. These are things that I invite into my daily routine, and I do see a difference. And I hope that if any of you out there have any suggestions, please reach out at DinineSig.com and share your self-love or self-help or just how you take care of yourself. Share your tips there, or even in your reviews on the podcast notes. We'd love to hear it. Thanks for that question, Kelly. That's a great question.
Hey, Dinine, longtime LinkedIn follower, first-time caller. This is Nate Spangle, host of the Get In podcast. We talk all about Indiana and the fun stuff going on and share some uplifting Hoosier stories similar to yourself. So I have a two-part question for you. The first, obviously, moving from the East Coast to the Heartland here in Indianapolis, I'd love to know what differences you see between the East Coast and Indiana and what makes each of them special. Actually, that's kind of a layup, right? What makes them different. The hard part of the question would be, what similarities do you see from the East Coast to Indianapolis, Indiana, and what do you love about both of those places? Cool. Thank you so much for all the hard work you do, and I'm super excited to hear what you have to say.
Hi, Nate. So thank you for that question. I'm going to start with what is different about the two different cities. New York City is massive with over 8 million people, just the sheer size of it. Indianapolis has around, I heard 900,000, less than 1 million, right? So there's a huge difference there. The density of New York City has made it mostly a 24/7 city, on all the time. And Indy is more laid back. I will say, though, that since COVID, New York has taken a step back from that sort of 24/7 vibe. A lot of places do close down a lot earlier now. The pace of life, New York is very fast-paced, people constantly on the move, very difficult to sort of get to know people. It's just a little bit harder. I did make friends. I brought my kids up in New York City for most of their life. And you kind of had to multitask, like you made friends with, and I think that happens everywhere, but really in New York City, you made friends with the parents that were in your kid's class or on your kid's baseball team or in their ballet class or volleyball. I find that Indianapolis has a different sort of pace, and I have friends here My kids are in college. I have friends here who have kids that are 5 and 6 years old. I have friends who have no kids. I have friends who have kids that already have their own kids, so they're grandparents. I have, friends of all different ages and lifestyles. And I think Indianapolis kind of lends itself to that with its pace of life and its open Midwestern type of friendliness. So there's a difference there. Public transit versus cars, huge difference that I think anybody would notice, right? New York City, people who live in New York City, and I lived in Lower Manhattan, rely heavily on one of the best subway systems in the world, although an old one, great buses and great system just to walk. And Indianapolis is so much different than that, extremely car dependent. I have a car here and I love driving, but when I'm in New York City, I jump on that M15 from the Lower East Side to get to, uptown, and it's an express bus. And it's one of my favorite modes of transportation. And when I want to include a little walk, I stay on the 15 and I walk west to whatever avenue I want to go to. As long as the weather cooperates, it's one of my favorite things to do. The cost of living is another major difference. New York City is just one of the most expensive places in the world to live, hands down. Everything that I had to buy while I lived there was so much more money than any other place I lived, including Indiana and Indianapolis. So I just don't think there's any comparison there. The sky-high rent, the ridiculous amount that you would pay just to go out at night, go to dinner, just a really different standard there for going out and about. The cost of living is insane. So I find Indianapolis to be far more affordable in almost every single way. When you come to things that I think might be viewed as different, but I see as a similarity, because I want to switch to similarities now, I'm going to start with sports. New York City has multiple teams. We've got the Yankees, we've got the Mets, we've got the Knicks, the Giants, the Jets. So we've got pretty much any team that you would want. We've got the Islanders if you like hockey. And Indianapolis, I find to be much more of a football town. And then, of course, you've got the Indy 500 and what people here refer to as the season. I'm a diehard Yankees fan. I bleed blue, so I kind of miss that there isn't a huge baseball scene here. But I do see similarity in the way that people in Indianapolis love the Colts. It's similar to the way people in New York love the Yankees and Mets, or the Giants and the Jets. I see people love their Pacers here. And of course, with the addition of Caitlin Clark, the Fever has become sort of a great hometown team, especially for me. This New York girl is a diehard now Fever fan. So that's pretty awesome. So that's a similarity. And piggybacking off of that, there's a lot of local pride. I find that residents of both New York City and Hoosiers here in Indiana and Indianapolis specifically, they're really proud of where they come from. They're passionate about their town, especially you, Nate, like with what you do with the show, proud about, what's great about Indiana, what's great about Indianapolis. And a lot of people will show that pride through their hospitality, and that comes through. And I think you'll find that also in New York City. New York City is really famous for its global food options. You really can't miss any type of food that you want in New York City. It's going to be there. I find that Indianapolis has a really cool growing food scene and got great local restaurants right here in Indianapolis, great farm to table spots, and even some pizza places I think can come close to New York City. So I do see some similarities, believe it or not, there, even though New York City is known for having those amazing options. And then if we want to just, one other thing that I think is interesting is that New York City has Central Park and the High Line. Indianapolis has the Indianapolis Cultural Trail and the beautiful White River State Park. And I think that there's some similarities there. Central Park might be more famous, and perhaps, well, it should. I think that Hoosiers have a lot to be proud of with what they've built right here in Indianapolis and what they've kept green. So overall, I think New York City is a really fast, global, expensive metropolis, while Indianapolis is more of a laid-back, affordable, community-driven city. And I do see that the strong local pride goes throughout both cities. So I think their unique identities make them special, but they're also is a thread that makes them both great. And for me personally, I love when I get to leave Indiana and go back to New York, but I also love leaving New York and coming back to Indiana. So it goes both ways for me now. Thank you, Nate, for that question.
Hey, Dinine. It's Lanika, one of the co-hosts of Book Talk Trio podcast. We were wondering, if you were to listen to a podcast about books, what were some specific topics that you would like to hear?
Hi, Lanika and the girls at Book Talk Trio. Thank you so much for that question. Since my show is about deep and meaningful conversations, I think that some of the things I would love to see covered specifically would be books that change lives, deep dives into books that have had a profound impact on people, personal stories from readers, or personal stories that have been shared through generations. The second thing, because my show is called The Space in Between, is maybe the space in between pages, exploring themes of hope, resilience, transformation in literature. This would definitely tie into my show's vibe, but I think it would be good for you all at the Book Talk Trio to have something like that on if you were asking me in that way. Because I'm a widow, I also like to see widows portrayed in literature, especially where they are overcoming the obstacles that present. And I would like to see them contributing in a meaningful way in society. Legal thrillers also sort of call to me. As an attorney, I enjoy discussions on how legal thrillers are compared to some real courtroom experiences. My other question on the show was about New York City compared to Indianapolis. So I would love to see books that explore the themes of living in cities, either big cities like New York or smaller cities like Indianapolis, and see the city portrayed as an actual character. The show Sex and the City with Sarah Jessica Parker is based on books, and the author's driving mission was to portray New York City as the fourth or fifth main character in that series. And I think they do a good job of that. Baseball is another favorite of mine. So I love reading books that incorporate baseball into their story, baseball history, even books specifically about the Yankees or memoirs of athletes, especially athletes that have overcome some adversity to get where they are. I love those types of stories. I'd love to see books that deal with grief and healing, especially ones that focus on healing. That would be a real interesting discussion for me to see you all cover or another podcast cover. And then, of course, if you all had a minute or a show where you spotlight authors who write about finding the light in dark times, or they were to talk about how they themselves overcame something to write the story that was inside them, that would be really, really interesting to me. So thank you, Lanika and the girls from Book Talk Trio. I really appreciate that question.
This is Chewy from the League Mates. We have two questions for you today. First, the hardest part of fantasy football is naming your team something clever or funny. So we wanted to know, what would you name your fantasy football team if you were in a league with us? And then the second question, this one's a little bit closer to home for me. I know you're a Yankees fan. So how do you feel about Juan Soto leaving to go to the Mets? Thank you.
Hey, Chewy. Hey, League Mates. Thank you so much for that question. I'm going to go with the easy one first. What do I think I would call my fantasy football team? Well, since the show is called The Space in Between, and I'm a lawyer, I'm wondering about something like the Grief Gridiron or Spaceballs or In the Space Zone. I know I came up with a better name last night when I was thinking about what I would call my fantasy football team, but it's left me right now. The Yankee Spacers is another one, since I love the Yankees. But thank you for that question. Hopefully that helps you guys out. How do I feel about Juan Soto leaving the Yankees for the Mets? This really makes me not happy. His recent move from the Yankees to the Mets, it was initially a focal point. I think the baseball world has forgotten about it for now. I'm sure it'll come back up as the season gets into full swing. He signed a 15-year, $765 million contract with the Mets, making it the largest in Major League Baseball history. That agreement includes a $75 million signing bonus, a full no-trade clause, an opt-out option after 5 seasons, and the deal provides him with a luxury suite and 4 premium tickets. Okay, whatever. What did the Yankees offer? $760 million. There's a $5 million difference there. That angers me. That gets me mad. And I can't handle it. Like, I just have to be real here, guys. He left the Yankees over, in my opinion, $5 million. And that sets me off. So a lot of people, they grow up and they dream of wearing pinstripes. He had a chance to wear pinstripes. And I'm upset that my team didn't pull through for the series. We waited 15 years for the series in 24, and I understand that. But over $5 million, I just don't know that I'll ever be able to get over that. So it seems like it was a combination of both financial incentives and, the Mets' new sort of focus on trying to create a championship caliber team. So, Yahoo for the Mets. They're finally, I think trying to get some things right, and that's good for them. But I just don't think I personally will ever be okay with this. So thanks for that question. It'll probably make me angry until 2030 at least.
Hey, this is Amy Kandrak with What Friends Do, host of the podcast Kitchen Chat. And I am curious if you have any special rituals or things that you do before each episode that you record. I know for me, I try to record most of my episodes in my kitchen, and when guests come in, I have some hot water going for a cup of tea, and then I also have a stack of really funny coasters that have different memes and funny quotes on them, and I let each guest choose one that resonates with them. I find it helps kind of lighten the mood and get them ready to chat. But curious if you have anything that you do.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for that question. I love your show, and I think what you do for other people at What Friends Do is just an amazing resource for the community. So thank you. So my show is about these in-between moments, bringing light to dark situations. So part of what I want to do before every show is kind of reflect on what the intent is for the show. I like to take a quiet moment and kind of center myself for a minute and try to make sure I'm bringing authenticity and heart into the conversation. I don't always have a playlist that I'll listen to, but when I do have extra time, there's a couple of songs I might go to and listen that will sort of get me in the flow of creativity, because I don't want a completely scripted show, but I do want to have general points so that I know the intention of the show. I know where I want to go, whether it's me alone on the mic or with guest or guests. I also love to have a nice cup of coffee for energy. So we do have that in common, even though yours is tea. I have not been able to offer my guests coffee. I would like to have that moment beforehand, and it might be something I would want to incorporate. I do make sure to have waters on hand when people come, just so that they don't get parched with talking. And I hope that makes them comfortable. But I love the idea of a warm cup of Joe or tea. I love along those lines, I love the idea of giving guests the chance to pick their own coaster. That I think is a really cool idea. And I'm wondering how I could incorporate something like that for my guests, not necessarily coasters, but something that would give them a little stamp of personality during the show. I really like that. I review my notes. I'm sure you do too. I, again, don't want to have an over-scripted show, but I do want to be prepared. I do that as a sign of respect for the guests and the guest time. And also for myself, I don't want to be in the habit of having shows that don't go in the direction I want them to go. And we know sometimes when you don't prepare, that might happen. I like to do a quick pep talk also. I like to tell myself, you're doing this for a reason. There are people out there that will, hopefully benefit from what you're doing, and just keep that in mind. And that's another thing that I let my guests know as well. You're here for a reason. My guests want to hear what my listeners want to hear what you have to say. And I hope that that comforts them. I try to also make sure that they understand how valuable I see them for coming into the studio and sitting down with me and, giving a piece of themselves to my listeners. That's really important part for me that I want to make sure I always bring forward and that I follow up with them in that sense. So that's a great question, Amy. I love what you do for your guests, and I really appreciate you sharing that question. Thank you so much.
Hi, Dinine. This is Josh Gillespie from Voices of Indy, and I know you like to focus on trying to find light through darkness, and I was wondering if you happen to find or have found in the past any kind of music that helped you bring you from darkness to light.
Hi, Josh from Voices of Indy. Thank you so much for that question. Music plays a huge part in my life. And I want to sort of explore that with you here. So some of my favorite artists are varied and widespread across the industry. I love Billy Joel. I love Frank Sinatra. I love Eminem. Those three guys have probably very little in common, but those are my guys. I love Van Morrison too. Billy Joel and Van Morrison, they're storytelling. Those are storytellers, I think, in a different way than Frank Sinatra or Eminem. So sometimes after I needed to calm down, I had maybe a difficult day or just a day that was stressful and I wanted to turn it off, I would turn on Van Morrison or Billy in that sense and just sort of, not to pun right now off of Eminem, but lose myself a little bit and go there. Vienna, that song is transformative. It reminds me of some of life's toughest moments, along with All for Lena, which is a hard driving song of Billy Joel's, not a very well-known song. But in that song, the angst and the power that he experiences in that angst, I find it extremely moving. There's a purpose to it, and the melody, I think, pushes through and kind of reaches me in a different way than some other music does. Billy Joel's music just, I think, balances melancholy with hope, making it sort of really great at times for finding light in dark times. Frank Sinatra is sort of just the soundtrack of my life. Growing up in an Italian-American family, Frank Sinatra was just required listening. And I probably loved him from in utero based on my mom's love for him. And some of the songs, The Way You Look Tonight, could bring me to tears at times, and it could also bring the biggest smile to my face. When you listen to My Way, whether it's his version or even Elvis Presley's version, there's so much grit and perseverance in that song that it reminds me that setbacks, they are just part of the journey. It's not necessarily designed to keep you down forever, and it shouldn't keep you down forever, but it's just part of life. And Frank Sinatra has a song called That's Life. You're riding high in April and you're shot down in May. And I have definitely experienced that in the past couple of years. And I understand that completely. So Frank Sinatra, I think his voice carries an old school type of wisdom that makes almost anything feel possible, even during hardship, even after hardship. There's just a confidence there that when I can tap into it, brings me such deep, I don't know if the word joy, but deep resilience, deep fortitude. And then when we talk about fortitude, segueing into Eminem, who is just a different type of storyteller than those two guys. He's raw, he's unfiltered, but he's relentless. Eminem is relentless. I know Jay-Z once described Eminem's voice as like percussion. And I feel the same. It's just the banging of a drum, but in the most melodic way. There's nothing that hurts your ear, or at least my ears. There's nothing that hurts my ears about Eminem. The song Mosh, which is also not another one of his most famous hits, but it's about voting, and it brings me to literally want to cause a revolution. It's just such a powerful song. Lose Yourself is like a fun little ditty. Not Afraid is one of those things that I think could probably be accessible to everyone. It's probably one of his more famous songs. I kind of just love some of the lesser known songs by Eminem, and some of them are pretty, R-rated, but they're just amazing. And I think his music fuels, if you have that fire inside, it fuels it. If you don't have it, it might help you ignite it, push forward. It helps you maybe take control, maybe rewrite the story when you're down. Take a pen and rewrite it. I'm not down. I'm not out. I think Eminem, more than a lot of people, is true proof that even the darkest of struggles can be transformed into something truly powerful. So those artists are some of the ones that I think help me bring light from out of darkness. And I really thank you so much for that question. That was a great question for me to reflect on. Thanks so much for that.
Hey, Dinine, this is Nick with Mosaic Minds Podcast. Just want to call in and let you know that had a great year. As of February 13th, we have just hit our year mark, and we also hit our 50th episode about 3 weeks ago. So it's going great. Something we never planned on, honestly. It was just supposed to be a hobby, but we've done a lot better than what we ever anticipated. It's been an amazing experience. Probably the best thing about it is just the connections that we've made and the people that we have been blessed enough to meet. Really, I think the key to our success that we've had is just that we try to not make it about us. We try to give back. So the biggest purpose each time we have a show is for us to make our guests look as good as possible. We want to prop them up, and we want them to do well. And in exchange, I feel like that we've gotten it back from the universe or God or whatever you want to say. So thanks for the invitation, and good luck.
Hey, Nick from Mosaic Minds. Thank you so much for that comment. Congratulations on your success. You guys are doing some good things in the community, and I'm really glad to see it. And thanks again for calling in and leaving that comment. I want to sort of just jump in a little bit on the comment and maybe answer it in a way, even though it wasn't a question. I agree with you. I want to give my guests also the best possible advantage when they're on the space in between. And I like to start that experience before we hit the record button. I really want every conversation to feel natural, meaningful, and empowering. I try to take a few steps to make sure that they shine. I try to create a comfortable atmosphere, which I kind of went over a little bit with Amy's question from Kitchen Chats. I want my guests to feel at ease. I want them to understand. So we have a casual pre-show chat. We kind of try to set the tone. I let them know what I think are important things that I want to hit for that show. And I let them know that it's a judgment-free zone. And they also have full sort of review of the show. And if they feel uncomfortable with anything they've said, that's why we have good people in post-production that can edit it out. I want them to feel comfortable having a really natural conversation. I do try to tailor questions to their strengths. So I do my research, and I will craft questions that I hope allow them to speak confidently about experiences and their expertise, because I want my listeners to get the most out of that guest, and I want the guest to get the most out of that experience. I really do want to draw out their best insights, not put anyone on the spot. Along with that, though, while I do come prepared or try to come prepared as much as I can, I don't want to force rigid structures. I did have one potential guest that wanted all questions in advance, and we haven't been able to really work out a recording date because I haven't felt completely comfortable with that format. I don't want people to be uncomfortable, but I also don't want a rehearsed show. I do want a conversational flow. So that's something I'm still working on myself as far as putting guests in their best light. I want to give them all a chance to talk about what they do, promote their work, whether it's a book or a project or a cause. But I also want each of my guests to bring something to the show that is a resource that my listeners could access without having to pay for anything. So everyone that comes on that has a book or a course or some service they offer, I would like them to also bring resources. And I think that's a good way to manage both helping the guests promote what they do, but also helping my listeners feel like, okay, I got something out of that. And then I like to follow up after the show when I send them the edited version of the show before it goes to publish. I want to point out, and there hasn't been a time that this hasn't been true, how wonderful I think the show turned out. I wouldn't be publishing it if it hadn't turned out wonderful, and telling them how thankful I am for their participation. And also that I think the show, most of my shows, are going to help people. And that is the number one mission, is really to impact lives in a very genuine way. And I think that every show, by the time it gets to right before that publish button, it does that. So at the heart of it, Nick, I want every guest to walk away feeling like their story mattered, that they matter, and that our conversation was one they are very proud to take part in and to be part of. So I think we're probably similar in that way. Thanks again, Nick, for calling in. I really, really appreciate it. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening today on The Space in Between. So the goal of this show was to highlight some Indiana podcasters, but also to have you all get to know me a little bit better as well. So please take a listen to these shows that are going to be showcased in the notes below wherever you're listening right now. This was a new concept of having only podcasters call in with either questions or comments, and I'm really grateful to each and every one of these show hosts that did call in. So please check out their shows as listed below. Thank you to Nate. Thank you to Amy, Lanika. Thank you to Josh and Chewy and Nick. Thank you to all of you for calling in with these really interesting questions that made me think today. I really appreciate it. Thanks again. And thank you to my listeners. I know that you're always willing to go on a journey with me for a different type of show. So thanks again, guys. And I hope you have a great day today. Thanks again. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember that even in your worst days, there is always something beautiful. You just need to look for it. Until next time.